So I got an impression from the webinar yesterday. I could be wrong, so I don't think we should explore that just yet. But I think we may need to redo a little work on that. It's still good the way it is. I don't know, like I got an impression that I think we're going to need to do it a few times before I can tell whether that is accurate or not. But yeah, it's just there's something working there in the background. So we'll let it do its.
I felt like it was like there being like one point or main theme. I feel like it's gonna be a little while before that all kind of like gels together, where it's like super duper obvious for somebody seeing it for the first time. For us, it's sort of like we're juggling a lot of things, and it's like we're close. We have a lot of the material there, but it needs to be super super deliberate and also a lot shorter.
Yeah, I was looking at the video, like I forget
like,
what 2
how do we get
hours.
this from 2 hours down to like 40 minutes?
Well, I don't think it needs to be 40 minutes. If you look at a lot of webinars, it's around the 60 to 90-minute mark. But I do agree. I think we need to kind of like, so it's kind of like writing. This is the first draft, and then we need to condense it where it's like thing that happens, there's a point to it. So we need to remove everything that's useless. So basically, we need to remove ourselves. Like, you don't need us to slow you down. So just, here's the PowerPoint, go through it and let us know what you think.
Pretty much.
I think the first part worked really well. Like we're just doing the back and forth, having fun. It was like entertaining. At least I think it was. Like maybe it was just for me because I was part of the conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like the second part is like there's nothing wrong. The stories were good. Everything was good, but it's like it was a little kind of like too intense, And I don't know what it is about that because like if you look at, let's say, Russell Brunson's webinar, it's very like focused on business, very serious, but it's like it was still very entertaining and engaging. And I'm trying to understand like what was the difference. I think maybe that's just going to come up naturally with time. Like we're going to figure things out.
Yeah.
But still, it felt way better because before we started the webinar, I'm like, I kind of half practiced once. And then we started, I'm like, okay, this is fun. We're in the groove. Things are like rolling smoothly. It's like if there was someone there, it would have been like a relatively good webinar,
Yeah.
So at least it wasn't horrible. All right. So do you want floats? Do you want to work on the PowerPoint? So far, that's what I have.
Let's see. What did I actually
write? You missed it, but whatever.
Wasn't that? Was it this? Well. I wrote down some notes with stuff to update, and I don't see it anywhere. Where did it go?
It's funny because the only thing I remember is the one thing you didn't write down. So in my brain, I'm like, okay, you need to remember this. And that was like the inserting the jokes between the things to kind of like, relieve the tension a bit and just kind of like segue. Like it doesn't have to be a joke, but just kind of like an intermission or something. Like, Tony Robbins, when he like, all right, let's take a break, like get up and like clap your hands or whatever the hell he does. Like it like cuts and releases the tension and the boredom and whatever. So it's like it just kind of like resets things. And I think having something like that could be good.
Tidy, email, punch, calls. Where did that thing go? Well, look back next week. By accident. No. So strange. All right. Well, is it my phone? Maybe that would be weird. If it's my phone, but none of my. Yeah. Okay. So the things that I have on my calendar, I guess must be. Oh, maybe I have that calendar hidden. Oh, that's weird. It went on my family time calendar. That's why. Okay, so the notes that I have are making some screenshot slides that are like, here's like a visual representation of like what success looks like for us. It's like we do make sales, we wake up and get notifications in our inbox, and we're not out there hustling and marketing and grinding. So it's like I was gonna take a bunch of screenshots from like my web portal where we sell our books and like Stripe account, different things like that, just to kind of show some of those. And then there was one about social proof, like just having another slide where at the end of the presentation we read like 3 different quotes of people who work with me, but like having other social proof on there of like stuff that we don't necessarily have to read, but just you see a lot of like comments and reviews of people, or stuff that people have said of people working with us. And then I didn't make a note of this, but this is something I've been wanting to do for a while. I'm like, we'll get to it when we get to it. But it feels like at the beginning when we introduce ourselves, we need to give people like a visual representation of us as well, because we're describing each other and what we do. But like, I'd love to show pictures of you like traveling the world, like some of the cool visual pictures of you doing dream stuff that people kind of imagine doing, and like pictures of me with my teams on vacation, and so to kind of like position us as like here's a picture of us sort of in our quote unquote natural habitat. It's sort of like, if you were to get to where we are, this is what it might feel like, and you get to look at a picture or several pictures of like, here's a little tiny slice of where our life is at right now. So those are some of the things that I thought of. And then the other thing is just lots tighter. One note that I noticed is it feels like we're on a slide when we're telling the stories for each of the secret frameworks. It feels like we're on the slide for a while, and I can't remember how we talked. If we talked about like we were going to cut back to me as I tell the story, or if we wanted to like have like an image or something that represented the story. But it just feels like that story needs to be much more scripted and constructed in terms of like that back and forth pendulum swing of like where the energy is in the story. It's like, this happened, but then this happened, so I realized this, so I tried this, and then that happened, and then but this got in the way. It's like very intentionally constructing that, flip-flopping back and forth where the power is in the moments in the story, because it feels a lot like that's the area where we're both good at like creating attention and like holding, like being entertaining enough. But I don't think that's what we really need for this. It's like we need brevity and for the thing to communicate everything that it needs to get across. And so for that, I feel it feels a little bit like we need the stories to almost be like scripted out so that I can hit the beats and just like I'm doing it more like a play or like a performance instead of like I'm working off of bullet points and just riffing. It feels like it's a lot easier to kind of expand and be kind of too fluffy if I'm just doing it off the top of my head. So that was the one note I had for myself was like, in order to get the time way down, probably need more of an actual structure or script built for those stories. It feels a lot like that's an area where if you're losing people or like people don't understand enough, then you can like explode it out and okay, where do we need the cross section to like dive into detail into things? But in terms of it just being something that I would sit through, it feels like the whole thing needs to be like less than half as long.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think that's just the thing. That's one of the things. Like that's the impression that came up for me yesterday. Is I don't know how to describe it. It's just like they're good, entertaining stories, but I'm like, are we leaning too much into the story aspect and not enough into let's just because if you look at the Russell Brunson webinar, it's like literally the simple story of how he created his first funnel and how it started working and then he got slapped and it's like he had to figure out a new solution. He discovered upsells and that's the entire funnel process. And it's like it's a super simple story, but it works really effectively. And it's like our stories we're telling are better, but they're not as connected and as clear as his. So I'm like, did we go in the wrong direction? That's kind of what I was wondering.
Yeah, I think to some degree it's like when the stories become really fleshed out, we probably have to work harder to like help them zoom back out and be like, here's how this story is connected to the bigger theme of what we're trying to help you see. I don't think it's necessarily wrong to have like really strong storytelling, but it also means that the thing we want them to focus on can get lost more easily.
Yeah, I think it's like storytelling is very important. I think we need to keep that. I just think we maybe approached it in the wrong way because we approach it from the perspective of what is the most entertaining, dramatic, impactful story we can tell to illustrate this principle, rather than what is the simple like story of how we discovered this, and then use storytelling to make that story as interesting as it can be. And I think that might have been kind of like the place where we kind of veered off.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means we need to like completely scrap stories and kind of just like simplify and rework. I don't know, but it's just that kind of the impression I got yesterday of like, this is good, but it doesn't feel like a normal webinar.
Yeah.
And the whole like, we're trying to follow the perfect webinar structure. It's like this didn't feel quite like that.
Yeah. I've noticed most people who do webinars don't tell lots of stories like in the same way. It's like they tell stories to illustrate stuff, but it's very like Russell Brunson's like very bare bones. And that maybe I don't know if that's because that's what's easy for people to do, or if it's because they've tested that it's better to have it that way. I don't know. But yeah, in terms of like modeling what people do.
But I think that's the thing. We got a little lost in the stories. And because of that, it kind of like ended up complicating things and make it a little more like scattered.
Yeah. I don't mind. I mean, for me, I would rather listen to a bunch of stories. Like, I'd rather listen to a podcast than a webinar, honestly, because most webinars are a little boring and very teaching heavy. But it needs to be. There's a skill to like taking elements of the story and creating hooks from it and be like, so that's why, like, if you heard that story, now you should understand why this point. It's like, and that point opens a loop for you to tell the next story. So if we can figure out how to do that, I think it has the potential to be stronger.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, a webinar is designed to, knock over that big domino.
Mhm.
So the origin story is just sharing like, hey, this is how I discovered the power of community, like 5 minute Facebook groups. And then it's like the vehicle. It's like, this is how 5 minute Facebook groups work.
Yeah.
It's like, this is how easy it is for you to do. And we've set this up in such a way that there's nothing outside of yourself that can stop you. And it's like, the whole point is like escalation to just get them to the point where they're like, okay, yes, 5 minute Facebook groups is the solution I need. I know that I can do it, and there's nothing that's going to be able to stop me. That way, once we get to the close, it's just like, you get this plus this plus this plus this plus this, and you get this discount. There's this fact bonus. There's limited spots. You have 60 minutes. It's just like, it creates that perfect storm of, yeah, I need to buy. And I think we're not really missing that. Like, all the elements are there. We're just we need to kind of rework and readjust things. So it's like, that's the exact process they go through. So it's kind of like, we have everything we need there. We just need to remove all the excess stuff and like rearrange it a bit.
Yeah.
And it's like, even right now, the way it is, we can give it and it would still probably be relatively effective. So I don't think we need to do a complete overhaul and rework everything right now.
Mm-hmm.
We can make a few small tweaks, and we know in the back of our minds, like, that's what we're aiming for. So let's slowly get to that point. But I think we can still keep going with what we have right now.
Yeah.
I say, like, that should be our focus for the next week. Like, if we want to do, we can make a few small tweaks. But I think for the next week, our main focus is just like, reach out to as many people and invite as many people as we can to the webinar.
Yeah, that's true.
Run a real webinar with actual people there and get feedback and say, all right, what's happening? What are people saying? Is this working or not?
Mm-hmm. I think that's probably the smartest thing, is just promote, just get people in front of it, because we could tweak and tweak and tweak, and it doesn't matter if we're tweaking the wrong things.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, even if we perfect it, it's like, all right, it's twice as effective as it is now, but there's like 10% of the people that show up. And if we focused all our attention on getting people there, it's like, okay, we get lower conversion rate, but there's 10 times more people showing up. So we're actually making more sales. Yeah. It's like, do we really want to try to make it perfect, or do we want to try to get it in front of as many people as we want,
Yeah.
All right. Are there any things you feel like, okay, we really need to insert this into the webinar now?
So from that standpoint, like, other than maybe a slide for each of us in the introductions, where we have like even just a picture, like, that puts us in some other context, I think could be cool. Maybe if we and I'm not in a hurry to do that if we feel like, I don't have anything that I really want. But like the picture of you like in front of the pyramid with the tarantula on your head, it's like, I feel like that picture communicates so much more about the kind of person you are than just talking wood. It's like people start to get a sense of like, oh, Guillaume is like grab life by the balls kind of person. It's like I start to get it.
I grabbed life by the ball. Oh shit, no, those were mine. That hurts. But yeah, I think you're right. So maybe we could have two slides. So like one slide of, here's all the, bullet points of this is who I am. And then another slide of like, yeah, but this is who I really am. And just like random like popping up of like, hey, I'm a real person. This is my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what we can do is if you want, we can each kind of go look through our pictures and just gather like, I don't know, half a dozen pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just like create slides using that.
Ooh, this is a good. This is a
Oh,
good.
by the way, did you listen to my messages that I sent you yesterday?
Yeah, but the butterfly trying to. I know you while you're trying to talk. That's
That was
weird.
so funny. I was like laughing so much. Oh man. I was just like, okay, that is gonna make such an entertaining story. Just like of the elements, it's so random of like, okay, I'm lying on top of the bed, naked, in the dark, recording a voice message, and there's this butterfly attacking me. uh,
Been working on a lot of different things. Learned on a lot of things I've been thinking about. I hope you had a great weekend. I hope it was relaxing through all of the different resources.
I feel like I've heard that recording multiple times.
Really?
Maybe not. Maybe it just sounds similar, but it seems like relatively often, like you do something on your computer and an audio starts playing, and it just always seems like the same thing to me. Maybe it's
Huh.
not, oh, but that's just the impression that I
I'm just that monotone.
get. I know, because like it's the sound isn't that great, so I'm not really paying attention to the words. It's just like the impression that it gives. But yeah, you're super boring. Like I hate talking to you so much. uh, so I guess that would be you're boring and I'm a masochist. Just kidding. So I guess you want to just float for a while since we don't really need to do any work right now.
Right now, no, pretty much just I'm gonna work on that bio and graphic for Leslie. 'Cause that was something she
You
wanted
actually
me
have work.
to do for
I have
her.
to do, so
Yeah.
I don't like feel pressured, but I forgot that you still got stuff to do. So I
Oh, this
guess
is
I'll.
this is interesting. We were talking yesterday about just talking and like creating content and then validating it. Brian did a post last night or yesterday. Where is it? I didn't get a notification about it. I just saw it on the feed, but he said that that's literally what he's doing. He said he spent like 2 hours. He wasn't at the computer, and he created um, enough content for like 81 posts, and he just records it and then transcribes it, and then that's the post. And he has a new framework that's like um, you just do like 4 or 5 lines so that when you have a lot of copy, Facebook will like shorten it. It'll like collapse it down, and then you have to click on it to see more. And he's teaching like there's certain kinds of posts. There's like a really long form post where you really move somebody into a belief that you have about your program or your philosophy. But then there's these shorter posts that are just designed to get in front of people all the time, and you want to do it short enough so that Facebook will show you the whole thing. So I think we're onto something. It's like if that's what Brian's doing, like I think we should just leverage the fact that we can just talk about anything and just turn all that into content.
It's like an entire book.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it's so funny because multiple times what's been proving to work, I hate that. I'm like, I would never watch that. I would never read that. I don't read like long post Facebook posts because long form Facebook posts, I'm like, I hate those. I find it a complete waste of time. But it works. So it's always like, I'm always conflicted and stuff like that. So I'm like, should I do what works or should I do what I like?
Yeah.
And I wonder what would work better. Like doing what you're saying, like recording a video and then transcribing and using that as the post, or recording a video and posting the video.
Yeah, that's something I'd be interested to try. Is like what would be the most engaging? A video, like an audio with text, showing like instead of a video, it's like audio text video, and then or like a written version of the post.
Or
And it'd be
you could record the video, transcribe it, put the text in the post and the video so people can watch whichever one they want.
That's true. I wonder.
Some people prefer to watch, some people prefer to do neither. I'm one of those people.
Okay, so that seems like it would be interesting. It's like if we just get a ton of content out there and get a sense of like what people are responding to, because I think at first you just need to do it consistently enough for like a week or two for the algorithm to go, oh, this person's posting consistently, and then it starts like sharing your content a little bit more to a wider range of your audience. But then if we did the what do you call it, search engine type stuff of like what are the topics in our niche that people are people actively search for, and then just do those kinds of things, like talk about that stuff. How does it relate to the way that we think about that topic, and how does our program solve it? Like what does our program give you that fixes that problem? And so then if you have, I would be really interested to see what performs best. It's like, is it a video of you talking about it? Is it a text video where it's just like one line or a few words at a time, where it forces you to stay engaged to read it, or like a text version of the post, or like a video with the text on top of it, and then you can click in the description and read the whole long form text. So like if you're interested in what it's saying, and instead of waiting for the videos, like you can skim the text version of it. It's like, I don't know. It would be really interesting to me to split test those and see.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I also think maybe we're jumping ahead. I think for now, there's two things we need to do. First of all, you need to create the sexy story training so we can include mastermind in the members area. And once we have that, we can start selling. Because that's the only thing missing. Like we're also missing the engagement firestorm, but it's like, even if it's not there when they join, it'll be fine. But if the selling story is missing, that could be a problem because we're like, hey, you need to do this in order to begin the course. And we need to do that as quickly as we can, and let me know if there's any way that I can help with that. And the other thing is, I think for this week, all we need to focus on is the connections you've already made, the people you've already helped, like all those things, like, you know, the people you've helped, the people who've given you reviews, the people who showed interest, like whatever, everyone you've interacted with for the business in the last 2 months. I think if you just reach out to them this like over the next few days, and it's like, hey, our entire focus is get people to attend the webinar.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's going to yield the most results. And then next week we can be like, all right, what's the strategy for this week? I feel like if we do that, like we can probably make like maybe
yeah. The story selling thing. Trying to think. I know. So I did. Where is it? Initiative. Okay, so story selling. Actually have like 6 hours of content that we can use for this. So the coach-a-thon that I did in the Freedom Initiative, each call was like 2 hours, and it's literally all we were talking about. It's like, all right, tell me your story that demonstrates authority, and I have like a whole bunch of examples of that. So right now we could just drop those 3 videos in, and then I have like an explainer video of like, here's what I'm doing with each of these people. It's like, you need to create a sexy story which creates a high story conversion rate. This demonstrates the value that you provide for your people. You need something that's simple enough that people can repeat your story to somebody else. And your story needs to have an invitation, like an offer or a call to action that tells people how to connect with you or how to go to the next level to get your help with the thing that your business helps them with. So it might be like, hey, you know, like my, you know, profile, or go to my website, or you can join my program by going to this, like whatever that thing is. So that's what constitutes a sexy story. And you'll watch me do this with like 9 people, and you know, and you can see all the feedback and, you know, stuff of how we find those stories. And then, you know, as people watch it, as people give feedback, like we can whittle it down. But that's like, in terms of like a bonus, I mean, 6 hours of story selling content, I think that could be a big value. I mean, in real life, to me, it's less valuable because it's like tons of content that you got to wade through.
Yeah, like too much.
But if you're doing it in the context of like a mastermind, you can point somebody to the video, they can scrub through it and be like, this is what you're trying to do. Just find those stories. And then what you want to do in the mastermind is like partner up with somebody and then start telling each other your stories. Like start sharing, here's where my expertise is about. And then if you want my help to do what I did on these calls, like here's the link if you want to book it.
The easiest solution for now is that what we were talking about yesterday, like, oh, we forgot the stay till the end to get this.
Mm-hmm.
And what if that is, will help you create this sexy story? No, wait, you already have this sexy selling story. So it's like, that doesn't work.
Say that again?
So I'm just saying, if we get everyone to claim the fast action bonus,
Mm-hmm.
you do, like, you get on a call and you do the selling story with them.
Mm-hmm.
The training doesn't need to be there yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we, I don't know. We need it anyway, so maybe we can do just like a short temporary version. Like, I don't know, do you already know what they need to go through in order to create it, or do you need kind of to figure that out? Just like, do you need to help other people create their sexy story in order to get to the point where you're like, I understand exactly the process they need to go through? Or do you already know that process and you can just record a training saying like, hey, this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3, this and you did.
Yeah, so you have a high story conversion rate. You need to have you need to make it simple. It needs to be simple and shareable. Like that's the first thing. It needs to be something that you could tell that somebody else could tell after they've heard it. So what are the parts that are memorable? What are the parts that make you feel something? And how do you make it entertaining? Like why was it important? How do you build in those values? And then it needs to have a high story exchange rate. It's like, are you connecting people to this is what I do that's valuable? This is the transformation that I create and I provide. And then the third is like, how do you get them to take action? How do you need to create oh, that's what it is. So the thing that they actually need to make it a sexy story is the action that they're asking people to take needs to be something that they want to do. It's like you need to find a way to make it valuable enough to them that when you invite them to take action, they're like, oh, I like this, that's exactly what I want. So like you're either providing some sort of free value, or it's like you've highlighted the problem and the solution so well that like when you offer and here's how to work with me, it's like they want in. You have to make sure that the action that you're asking them to take is one that they've already figured out in their mind and they're just waiting for you to make the invitation. So it's like you meet a hot girl at the bar and you're thinking, well, if we go out to dinner, it's like we'll get to know each other, make sure that there's not any like weird stuff I don't like about this person, and then hopefully like she can come over and spend the night. If that person comes up to you, says a funny joke, you know, she smiles at you, she like you're already attracted to the person, and then she just comes out with like, hey, I'm not super hungry tonight, you want to just go to your place? so we can have sex. It's like, that's a sexy offer. Like, that's a sexy story. And it's like the thing, yeah, but it's like, that's what you're already thinking. And you're thinking, like, okay, how many different steps? Like, what do I need to do? Should I go to their website? Should I? It's like, and you cut straight to what they want. So, what is it that they want? Is this the first time they've ever heard of you? Do they want to know more information about you? Do they want to know more about how do you help them? So do you need to offer a lead magnet on an interview? Or is this an audience that already knows you? So, I mean, I could show that framework, and here's like a bajillion examples of, us crafting sexy stories with people. And you'll see, like, they will tell a bunch of facts about what they do, and that's not a story. And then they'll tell a few things about how they help people, tell you a few more anecdotes, and then we'll settle into, like, you'll see almost every single one of them has, like, well, yeah, I have this one story where I helped somebody, and you immediately, as the person who's never heard anything about them, you don't know anything about the industry, but you immediately see, oh, that's what you do for people. That's the value that you provide. It's super clear when they tell a story, and most people are telling, like, information and facts about, their business and what they do. And so, like, I have some good examples, and maybe what I'll do is, like, I can go through and find two or three examples at some point, and just clip those out, just edit those out. So it'll be like, here's what they said when I said, what do you do for people? And they're like, profit. And it's like, we don't understand anything. And it's like, can you give me an example of a client that you worked with that was really happy? And then they tell a story, and you're like, oh, well, duh, that's what you do. So, yeah, I can record like a really quick video. In fact, let me see. I can tell a story to explain this. Like, so I'll have the framework up on the screen, and I'll tell the story of, I did a coach-a-thon where I worked with, I invited a dozen people to share their stories, people who needed some help with their marketing. And every single one of them had a hard time getting clients. Reason is because they would tell me facts about what they do for people, which doesn't give you enough information. It's like, if you understand the industry already the same way that they do, and you give those facts, then it might be helpful. The way almost all of us understand new ideas is through being told a story, by being shown, pulled along an experience. And so you'll see an example of, like, for instance, David Anderson, who you ask him, so what do you do? Well, I used to be in event planning, and I realized that my online, I needed to pivot my online business because we couldn't meet in person, and so a lot of venues and stuff weren't doing anything. It's like, we don't care. That doesn't tell me what your business is. So when he said, well, an example of one of the clients that I worked with was a corporate client who wanted a really extraordinary themed event, and she wanted it to be world class. Like, we came up with a bunch of ideas, pitched them to her. She picked the ones that she liked. We set up the event. We set up the venue. Got all of the logistics handled so that her people came in and just went to the event, and they said, this is the best thing we've ever been to. This is amazing. Who did you get to do this event? That's what he does for people, is create extraordinary experiences. When he was saying, like, well, I've been transitioning from in-person venues to trying to figure out how to help people in their businesses online, it's like, that doesn't mean anything. But when you say, I help businesses provide extraordinary experiences for their clients. It doesn't matter whether you're online or offline. It doesn't matter if you're in person or you're running a virtual event. It's like people who have a great customer base who pay their whose clients pay them a lot of money. They want to provide a great service that makes them stand out from the rest of their competitors. Something that makes them diehard fans of doing business with these people. That's something that he can bring to anybody who wants to create that sort of experience for their clients. And so you'll be able to see the format of having a sexy story is, can you make it simple enough that you could tell it to your mom, and then that is the value that you offer people clear enough so that you can understand, oh, that's the transformation. It's like, that's who I get to be when I hire you. And then it's really clear how to work with them or how to find out more information about, if you happen to be somebody who's like, well, actually, I need that, or I know somebody who needs that. What's the next step for me to do now? So that seems like it could be trying to figure out if just that by itself is enough of the story that it's like. And so if you watch these videos, you're going to see a bunch of examples of people who didn't have a great story. And I just asked them questions until we found a story that demonstrated what they did, so that you can start to get an idea of how you can, how you need to be looking for your own stories. And then, we can have a little worksheet or something eventually. It's like, okay, pick your story that demonstrates the value of what you do. Make it simple enough that somebody else could share it. And then tell us what to do if we want that identity or that transformation. What do we need to do next in order to take a step further in working with you?
Yeah, and I think maybe the training doesn't need to be that, detailed or complicated. We can use the mastermind as part of it. It's like, hey, here's the structure you need to follow. Mm-hmm. Write it, post it in the group, and ourselves and the community are going to provide feedback on it. Mm-hmm. It kind of removes the pressure. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just follow this framework, write the story, post it, and we'll let you know what you need to improve. Okay, so that's what it is. Like the Business Best Friends Mastermind. One of the purposes of that is go find somebody in this mastermind, tell them your story, and then have them tell you, here's what I thought about your story. Did it make you interested in finding out more? Or was it too long? Or was it I didn't care about any of the stuff you said, but you have a cat? Let's talk about cats. Figure out what is it that when you share stuff, people resonate and respond to. Make a note of those things, because those are things that will connect you to other people. So maybe you don't care about the fact that they only wanted to hear about your cat, but the fact that what you wanted to talk about wasn't what resonated with them is something you should notice, which means you're not talking about the thing that you want to talk about in a way other people care about it. And if you find out something interesting, somebody wants to talk about their cat, maybe you should talk to your community about the fact that you have a cat. That will connect you to a whole different section of your audience and just create another connection to you. Telling a story of I love my cat. Yeah, okay, but you're selling us business coaching. What does that have to do with anything?
I mean, you would.
I'm sure there would be a way to connect a story about a cat to business.
Yeah,
but it seems
you would want to do it in some sort of you would think that it would need to be connected in some way, but sometimes you can just make a post here's my cat today, and people will comment on it. People that gets engagement.
Oh yeah.
It's those are the kinds of things.
I thought you were talking about the story.
Yeah, and it may it may not be the whole story that you do. Like,
I mean, it can, but it needs to like be connected some way of like, hey, my cat was sick and I did like everything, all this insane, like crazy adventure to take care of my cat. And that is exactly how I treat my clients in business.
yeah,
It's like it's unrelated, but it's still related somehow.
yeah,
What I meant is just like some random cat of like, oh, I love my cat. He's so cute. It's like, yeah, okay, but that has nothing to do with anything.
yeah. All right, so let me think. Does this? I mean, I wanted to come up with something that was a little bit more entertaining, but I think that this example of the coachathon is probably a good example. It's like, because then it gives some context for like, here's 3 videos where I do this for 2 hours. These are resources that if you need more explanation than the framework, you just go sit through this experience and you'll start to get a sense of like what makes a good story. But in terms of it being a sexy story, it's like if you understand this framework, or it's like if you can't get your story clear and you want my help, it's like here's my calendar. But it like you don't need to work with me to do this. Like find a partner in this group, get together and say like what are a few examples of clients that I've helped, and just tell those stories to each other and then listen to the feedback. That's what you should do. And if you really want me to tell you, or if you really want Guillaume to help you construct a story, it's like sure, like that's part of how we help people. That's part of how we can get paid. But you don't have to do that. It's like here's the framework, here are the resources. You need to get your story clear so that you can put that in your group, you can put that in your community.
You know what? I think maybe we're overthinking this. I think maybe we just need to do a very quick, very simple training of like, hey, this is, the logic behind it. You need to do this, this, and this to create your story, post it in the group to get feedback. And if we want, once we start getting people before the challenge launch, we can be like, hey, a week before, we're going to do a live, sexy selling story event where we all get together and just talk about it and share and give feedback so that everyone has their sexy story ready by the time we launch.
I don't think we need an event. I think we just need to tell them.
We don't need it. I'm just saying like we can do that. So because of that, we don't need to make the actual training to create the story that complex, because we can always kind of come back to it later if we want to. Because we always want to over deliver, but I think sometimes, or a lot of the times, that's what makes things more complicated both for ourselves and for others. So it's like, what is the basic simple like 3 to 5 steps they need to go through to use that story, to create it, and to get back on it. I'm thinking of a story about a pufferfish.
Pufferfish?
Just because you're going. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help.
Let's see here. Oh man, there's something difficult to teach that if we could figure out how to teach this, people might have some better success. So I'm thinking about the fact that and we need to intentionally construct our webinar this way, in terms of opening loops that the audience wants to close. So it's like, I need to keep listening because they're promising to close this loop if I listen. Or it's like, I need to go take action and sign up for this thing to close the loop that they've opened in my mind. But here's a really good example of this. In Shawshank Redemption, it's like the last quarter of the movie or something. After the warden kills the kid that can prove that Andy Dufresne is innocent, he's like, I'm done. Like, and Red thinks he's like depressed and gonna kill himself. So he's like, up all night worrying about his friend. But the day, like that day, Andy tells him, "Hey, there's something I want you to do for me. If you ever get out, go to this wall in I forget the town, but it's like there's a big oak tree. You can't miss it. It's where my wife and I made love, and I asked her to marry me. And there's a volcanic rock that has no business being there. Look under that rock. There's something I left there that I want you to have." And so he's like, "What is it?" And he's like, "You gotta go find out." So it's like he tells him this. He gives him this treasure map essentially, where he hadn't been there yet, but he knew he was gonna get out. He knew he was gonna have money, and he knew he was gonna put it there. So he gave Red essentially. It's like, this is where I'm gonna give you money, but he didn't say that just in case, Red gets interrogated. Like, he didn't give him enough information. All he gave him was, here's what to do, and he gave it to him in a way that it opened a loop. He didn't tell him what he was going to get. He said, "There's something I want you to have." You know what? It's like now you want to know what is the thing, and then it's like the information that he gave him in terms of here's where to go. You don't really remember the details of like, um, it's like a wall, a few miles out of town under a big oak tree, but he like describes it as like this is where I asked my wife to marry me. He attaches it to an emotion. So then like that becomes something that you're visualizing and you're imagining as opposed to just like, if he had just given him the raw details like, hey, there's an oak tree on this farm under this wall. Go 50 miles or I mean go 50 paces like and go dig for a thing. It's like he gave him something unique that wasn't supposed to be there, like the volcanic rock that was out of place to look for. He gave him an emotional hook to cement the memory of that story. He opened a loop. He didn't tell him why he was telling him to go there, but he said, "There's something valuable in it for you. There's something I want you to have." But he didn't tell him what it was. I mean, we're I guess this is the thing. It's like we want you to create some very visible value. This is what happens when people work for you or work with you. Um, but you need to somehow open that loop so that I guess it just is like you don't need to open that loop if they're your customer. It's like by telling the story, if they want that outcome, you've opened that loop for them. It's like, oh, so how do I get that? So maybe we don't need to teach that now that I'm thinking about this. All right, cool. So we need them
Hold
to
on.
share.
Thinking
What's that?
about this from the webinar perspective, what if we reverse engineer it? What if our end goal, the conclusion, the satisfaction that people will get at the end is purchasing the product? That's what will close the loop. So if we come at this from a storytelling perspective, it's like that is the conclusion of the story. And we know it needs to tie everything together,
Yeah.
close the loop, make people feel complete, satisfied. So how do we reverse engineer that? What loops do we need to create? What do we need to foreshadow beforehand so that when they get to that point, it's just like everything clicks. Like all I need to do is purchase this
Yeah.
and every single loop is going to be closed. And maybe like we don't need to focus on this right now. Maybe it's actually probably a distraction.
Yeah. Yeah. As I'm thinking about this, it's like the people who have the problem. It's like I'm like stressed out to my eyeballs. I like maybe there's something interesting in this presentation. If we're talking about, here's some. Oh, that's the thing. It's like we're teaching different concepts, or like we're teaching what's in the program, but we're not making a big enough connection of an obvious connection with every single beat in the webinar. That's like this is how you close the gap of being overwhelmed. It's like when you have community is the smart list that
nurtures all your people, so you don't have to do emails. You don't have to write copy because people are talking about your outcome. You're showing people over and over and over how this thing reduces your overwhelm because it does this, it does this, it does this, it does this. The way you get it is our program shows you how to create assets that build safety and care and freedom into your community. We're not really trying to teach them like the pillars of like how it works. We're just saying this is what our program does. So it's like instead of trying to convince them of the how, we just need to like tie everything we're doing back to this is what's going to reduce your overwhelm. I wonder if I can go back through the testimonials and find better.
What if that's the structure we were using? Like every section of the webinar, it's like the first half of that section. So like let's say every secret, like every step of the first half. So it's like the title, like the secret is supposed to open questions, like promise, set things up, and it's like open as many loops as we can. The description of that should do the same thing. The first part of the story should do the same thing. Then the second part of the story and the framework for that should close all the loops. So they get to the end, they're like, oh, I understand why I need this. Like it closes the loop. It's like, open the loop for the vehicle. It's like, we're like, teasing why this is so important. And then at the end, like we discovered like quality communities is the solution. Like, soul families or whatever you want to call that. It's like, that's the solution. And it's like, it closes everything. They're like, yes, I understand. That is the solution. That is what I need. Then the next section, we introduce the next secret. And it's like, hey, you may think like you can't do it. It's so complicated and all those things, like open the loops. And then at the end we conclude, it's like, we've made it so simple that you can't fail. You can do it and do the same with the last part. Like there is nothing like, what if there's all these things that can stop me, overwhelm me, blah, blah, blah. It's like, we conclude with like, there's absolutely nothing outside yourself that can stop you. So by the time they get to the end, it's like, I 100% believe in Facebook groups or like, 5-minute Facebook groups. I 100% believe I can do it. And I 100% believe that there's nothing that can stop me from doing it.
So what are the 3 secrets the beliefs that they're supposed to address?
It's the vehicle. So we need to sell them on the vehicle. We need to sell them on the internal. So we need to convince them they believe they can do it.
Right.
And we need to sell them on the external. So there's nothing outside of you that can stop you.
Okay. So give me just a second here to think, because I think something's come up here.
Oh, okay. I think I got it. we need to once again approach this from a storytelling perspective. And what I mean by that is what makes a good, compelling story is throughout the entire story, you're like, oh, will he succeed? Will he fail? Will it work? Will it not work? There's always that uncertainty. And at the end, everything just like finds a way to come together. And it's like, against all odds, he succeeded. And it's like, that's the journey we need to take them through. Like by the end, it's like the conclusion, the closing of the loop is, oh, okay, everything came together and I realized it's impossible for me to fail. I think for each secret, the strategy, like 10 minutes on the story, taking them through that emotional journey from our perspective, well, your perspective, because it's your story. And the last 5 minutes is like just introducing briefly in the beginning and summarizing briefly at the end and having the testimonial. So it's like, just here's the secret, here's the description of the secret that opens the loop. Share the story of like, I was overwhelmed, I was struggling, it felt completely impossible. It felt like the weight of the entire world was on my shoulders, but I couldn't give up. So I kept pushing and pushing and pushing and failing over and over again. And just when I was about to give up, that's when I discovered the magic and everything just changed. Everything fell in place. And I discovered this one truly amazing secret that is 5-minute Facebook groups. It's like you take them through that emotional journey, and then you kind of like briefly retell the story, but from a step-by-step perspective. Hey, like step one is, we're like, this is the strategy behind it. It's like, that's why 5 minutes work. And then it's like, let me show you how it worked for one of our clients or someone we worked with. And then it's just kind of like ask questions like, is everything clear? And just summarize once again what you just told them, kind of like convincing them 5-minute Facebook groups is the answer because of this fact, because of this, because of that. Do you have any other questions? Anything unclear? No, okay. So now let's move on. And then we address the internal, taking them through that same like very roller coastery, like thrill ride of emotions, of like literally that epic hero's journey of like the fate of the entire world is at stake, and this one thing is the solution.
Okay. I think we might have a story or two that gets replaced, but I think the stories still work. I think the stories are still useful, but it might be that we put them in a slightly different order to create more open loops. I'm trying to reorganize it in my head. Maybe I should do that on here. So it's like
Because what I'm talking about is just taking them through the emotional journey that they will need to go through in order to get to the point where they're like, I understand what I need to buy. So it's like, that's why I love Russell Brunson's webinar, because it walks us through that. So it's like, you know, this is the struggle I had to go through, and I discovered click like sales funnels, and that was the solution. But then I was facing a different problem because I'm like, okay, I understand I need to build a funnel, but I don't know how to do it. And then he goes through the journey of, oh, I discovered I could just copy other people's funnel. And then it's like, okay, I can copy other people's funnel, but now how do I get people in the funnel? How do I get an audience? And then he walks us through the journey of discovering, oh, I can literally steal other people's audience and funnel that into my funnel. Like, he walks us through step by step how he discovered sales funnel and how he overcame the next problem, And it's like, it's perfectly structured that it walks them through the exact emotional journey they need to go through, so they don't have to go through what he went through. They just get walked through, and by the time they get to the end, they're like, okay, yeah, I need ClickFunnels, and I'm going to be able to copy other people's funnels and copy their traffic. So I have everything that I need right here to succeed. The only thing stopping me is the fact that I don't have it, so I need to buy it. And I feel like that's kind of like what we're missing. We have some of those elements, but we haven't structured it that like specifically, that concisely.
Yeah.
You know what's missing?
What's that?
You know what's missing?
What?
We go through the journey. That's why we're struggling so much. Because if we went through it, we would be able to tell the story super easily. If it's like, hey, we discovered the power of community. We created a community and, you know, like went through all the struggles of building the community and getting that to grow our business. It's like, we haven't done that. That's why we're struggling to share the story.
Yeah. So here's my alternate pitch. So I'm not 100% clear on like every piece that this is doing yet, but if we reordered it like this, so the open loop or the question that we're asking is like, what if you could get in front of millions of qualified prospects without feeling overwhelmed? 5 minutes a day. So let me tell you why we're sharing this, because I've been there. I've worked over 80 hours a week trying to grow my business. I had my dream job. I did everything myself, trying to make it happen, and the whole thing blew up on my face. I've been in a place where you've done everything the right way as best as you can, and it all backfires. Simon Sinek says, working really hard for something that you hate is called stress. Working super hard and seeing no results, that's overwhelm. working really hard for something that you love, it's called passion. So if you're not passionate about your business right now and it doesn't feel like you're best friends with your business because you're overwhelmed and you're stressed, you're doing things you don't like, you're doing things without seeing any results. I've been there. Now, you contrast that, I had every opportunity, I had every resource, and I tried to do everything myself, and it bombed. I watched somebody do the exact opposite of me. They invited a few people. They met every week. They let the people that they invited 18 people and stopped inviting from there. They let those 18 people invite more people. They let those 18 people volunteer in the areas that they want. They grew from 18 people and stopped working. The only thing that they did after that was show up every weekend. And that community grew to over 400 with a waiting waiting reservation system, a full breakfast buffet, and 118 volunteers. Like that's the power of letting your community do your work for you. That's the opposite of overwhelm. It's like, I'm going to do the little part that I'm going to choose to do, and everybody else can do what they're going to do. That's what community can do for you. Now,
Is that the big domino?
I think so. Is community is how you solve your overwhelm.
That's not what I mean. I mean this new view of community of like, people when they think community is like, I need to be the community leader. I need to invite everyone. I need to create content. I need to do all this. It's like shifting that, get them to realize you need to do a very minimal amount of work and let the community tell you what it wants. Let the community grow itself. Let the community do what it's going to do. By trying to be the leader and trying to control it, you're killing it.
Yeah, I think that's what the big domino is. It's like working too hard is what's making you overwhelmed. Like you're trying to do the right things instead of allowing yourself to just be at a place where you're no longer overwhelmed. Just decide that. So when it comes to like you think you want a community in your business, but you're like, oh, it's so much work. I've got to connect all these people. I've got to do all this stuff. It's like, no, you don't. I've watched it happen, and you can grow your influence from like nothing to millions of people by doing very little. Just do the part that nobody else in your community can duplicate. Just be you. And let the community be the community. Let them do the part that they want to show up and do. So we're giving them permission to stop working so hard, to stop trying, and giving them permission to give their community permission to work on behalf of the group. So go ahead.
Because if we use ClickFunnels as an example, it's like his big domino is convincing them sales funnels is the answer to their business problem. ClickFunnels is the solution that provides that. So our thing is, the solution is 500 Facebook groups, but the solution they're looking for is the kind of group that's created. I don't know how to describe that, but it's what you were just explaining. It's a group that just kind of like planting the seed of the group, watering a bit, and then it starts growing. All you need to do is kind of be there and like clip a branch every now and then and just kind of like clean around it and ask like, hey, what do you need? Do you need like water? Do you need shade? Like, what do you need? It's just like, it's that different approach to, community. That's what we're saying. That's what we need to convince them of. That is the big domino. Everything needs to be geared towards that. I'm wondering, like,
So
maybe,
yeah, if you could restate the big domino for me.
like, I think we need a term to describe it. So, like, as an example, self-grown groups, whatever we want to call that, but it's like that concept. We sell that concept. Selling them on that concept is the big domino. That is our equivalent of selling them on sales funnel. And 500 Facebook groups is the course that we created, teaching them how to create that kind of group. So I think, like, in the beginning, that's what we're trying to go for with, like, you don't need to reach millions, you just need a 500 Facebook group. But it's like, it's different. Like 500 Facebook groups is a mechanism through which they get that self-grown group. What we're actually pitching, what we want to convince them of, is self-grown groups is the answer. And I mean, maybe we need to come up with a different name. Like, I don't think that's quite catchy enough, but it's that concept we need to sell.
Got it.
And I think that's the difference, because we're trying to sell 5 minute Facebook groups instead of self. So it's like if Russell Brunson was trying to sell ClickFunnels instead of selling them the idea of sales funnel.
Right. So the big idea is a self-growing
But it's not really a group, it's more a community.
Yeah, a self-growing smart list. It's like, what if you could have a list of all of your prospects and customers, but that list grew itself and it nurtured itself with all of the smartest tech and AI that you could put into. It's like, that's what you need in your business. That's the one thing. But you know what? You know what another word for this is? It's a community. Now, not every community does this. Like, fans of Harry Potter are not a self-growing smart list that you can use in your business. Because the only thing that a Harry Potter community does is grow more Harry Potter fans. But what if you could use this idea of using a community instead of emails, content calendars, nurturing sequences, copywriting, paid ads, sales funnels, everything that you use to convert people is already happening and has been happening for like ever since we created tribes.
Okay, I realize what we need to do. We need to basically say everything you think you know about groups and community is wrong. You think you need to be the leader of your community. You think you need to grow it. You think you need to manage everything. You need to provide the content. You don't. Doing that is killing your community.
Yeah.
That's why there's so many communities out there that have millions of people in them, but the owner is not making any money or any impact because he's doing all the wrong.
Yeah.
What you need to do is create a self group, which is a true community, what community truly should be.
Okay. So the community is a self-growing smart list. Like, that's not a new idea. We just come up with a term with it. So there's nothing proprietary about a community, but the way that you think community needs to be built is wrong. If you do it the way you think you need to do it, you're going to kill your community. What we're offering is essentially fertilizer, like community fertilizer. It's like I'm trying to think. What's the right way of?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like you've been thinking about community all wrong. Community in itself is an incredibly powerful tool, but it's misunderstood. And the way that people are teaching you to build a community is actually killing the community, and it's creating something different. We call it community, but it's not really that. It's like we're kind of like re-teaching them. This is what community truly is. It's like you don't need to create a new sort of community. You just need to let community be what it really is and stop doing the things that are killing community.
Case in point, every community that has been destroyed by modern society. The nuclear family, the education system, religion, even like nationalism is kind of like going at like almost every tribe that has existed previously. It's like people are destroying these communities because they don't understand how they work. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, so what we need to do is create a whole bunch of counter programming to what would be obvious and what people think they hear about community building.
I think that's what we were missing.
Yeah.
We were missing the controversy.
Yeah. And I think it's like
Everybody knows, like every entrepreneur knows the value of community. We don't need to sell them on that. What we need to show them is community in itself is very, very easy to do. However, the way you've been taught to do it is wrong, and that is killing community. That's why if you've ever tried and failed, you didn't succeed, not because building a community doesn't work, not because it's difficult, because you were taught to do the wrong things, and that was killing it. It's like the less you do, the better quality your community is going to be. The happier they're going to be, the more fulfilled, the more impact. And it's like we just sell them on that. We make them realize like everything about community, the way it's taught, is wrong. Community in itself is very easy. Let us show you how easy it can be.
Okay, I know what it is. Here's the story. There's a farmer whose dream is to own an apple orchard. And so he buys this piece of land, he buys this property, and he's like, okay, I got my work cut out in front of me. I need to go buy a whole bunch of apple seeds. I need to get a tractor. I need to plow this field. I need to there's so many bushes, there's so many brambles, like the entire property is like unfarmable. There's no room for trees, there's no irrigation system. It's like the whole thing is just covered in weeds. And his buddy comes over and is like, dude, your entire farm is covered in wild blackberries. It's like the whole thing is already monetizable right now, but you want to have an apple orchard. All you need to do to make money is put up a fence and a sign that says, pick your own blackberries. That's all the work you need to do to make money. And that's what you're doing in your business. You think that to make a community, you need all of these things that you have to do before you have a real community. And the reality is, all you have to do is understand what is it that's here already. Put a label on it, and then people immediately get it. That's what community is about, is when the community crystallizes and consciously realizes this is what we're all here gathered together for. It happens every single time you sit down in an empty room with a bunch of strangers and the light turns on and you start watching a movie. It's obvious what everybody is there for. All you have to do is turn on the light. That's all you have to do, and you've got instant community. The light is something that we can show you how to do. Like the light switch and the exact light bulb that your community needs is already there. You just have to recognize it. So, I did everything myself. I was trying to farm the farm. I lost my sitcom. Because I didn't listen to anybody, I didn't understand what was happening. Whereas Roy, he let his volunteers build a 400-person standing room only ministry in an industry where ministries for adults are dying. Now he has a following of 4 million people. He barely did any work to grow that following. He literally did it by letting his community do the work. I was in front of millions of people. I got a chance to put my face and my story in front of millions of households. I didn't make any money. It's possible to get in front of millions of people with barely any work. But if you don't know how to sell, it doesn't matter. When I got on Facebook in front of 700 people, almost all of them turned off, but the 20 people that stayed bought into the high ticket program. We made $200,000 off of 20 people with the right fits because we said the right things to those people. So what are the right things? You have to understand what your community values. I didn't understand how to make friends when I got to college. I had no friends because I didn't interact with people. I didn't understand what people valued and how they connect. But when I went to a film festival with a bunch of buddies, we all connected because we all wanted to go to this film festival. We raised money. We asked people to give us money before we had made any movies. We called the film festival and said, we want to screen a film there. We haven't made the movie yet, but we're going to do it. We're going to take a trip and do a documentary of the trip. And we want to show us actually driving to your film festival and show that film at your festival. They said, great, because that's a good story that they could put in front of their audience. That's what they wanted to see. The value is what people connect over. And when you have real community, it changes your life. Like we had the experience of having a mastermind where every one of us connected over a shared value. We realized growing our business wasn't the thing we were connecting over. It was having integrity. Who am I going to be? Who am I becoming? How do I do that? That's a hard thing to do. It's like, I value being a better person, but how do I be a better person? And that's a tough thing to do. And it took us 6 weeks to even scratch the surface of beginning to understand what does it mean to have integrity. But in that 6 weeks, we built real relationship. We really discovered the things about each other and about ourselves that we never knew. You don't have to wait 6 weeks to create a community. You don't have to wait 6 weeks to put up a fence and say, here's a blackberry farm where you can pick your own blackberries, give me some money. You can create that in 5 minutes. I created a Facebook group when my daughter was born because I was doing a job that took 3 people to do before I got hired. I built a unique process so that I could distribute content to tens of thousands of people in our audience on YouTube. And when I was going to leave, I needed somebody else to handle the stuff that I was doing. So I created a Facebook group and put all of the instructions on what I was doing. It took me about 5 minutes a day. the value of what that community, the people that were going to take over for me when I took my vacation, was we want to make sure there's not a drop-in service. Content continues to get pushed out, and you've got this unique process to you that nobody else knows how to do. Like, tell us how to do that so that we still have content going out to our audience. That was the value. I created a group, a community with the exact instructions on how to get that result in 5 minutes a day. Community is easy. And the mechanism of being able to do that, to put up that fence, put up that sign, you can do the same thing in front of essentially like a city where 1 billion people live. And if you find the right value, it's like people are going to come to your place. They're going to come there and they're never going to want to leave.
I think the perfect analogy for this is moths to a light bulb. So it's like, you're like, oh, I want to like attract a big like cloud of moths, or like not moths, but yeah, moths, let's say, whatever. And so you're going out in the dark with a jar trying to like grab them. And it's taking so much work and it feels so overwhelming, and you only have like half a dozen.
Yeah.
If you
need
did
a
bulb,
high-end moth net, you need moth hunting boots, you need like a crossbow that shoots a moth net that you can get them from 50 feet away. It's like, and then you got to store them somewhere. It's like you get them one at a time, or you can just go to your porch and turn on the light and let them come to you.
Exactly. So it's like your group is the light. All you need to do is turn it on. They're automatically going to be attracted, and the word is going to spread, and more of them are going to come until there's so much that you get overwhelmed. It's like, I have so many clients, I can't help all of them. Like, that's what community really is. All you need to do is be the person who turns on the light. The rest is going to do itself.
Yeah.
It's so hard to catch them. Then you bring them back, and the second you release them, they just fly away because they didn't want to be there. Whereas if you turn on the light, they come because they want to be there, and they stay, and they invite more people because you're like, hey, here's the party. Here's the awesome place to be. Come and join us.
Yeah.
That's what community can and should be. It's like, stop treating community as a prison. Treat community as a party.
I like
what
that.
you need to do is just host the party. Invite a couple people. They're going to invite everyone else. The word is going to spread. People are going to show up. Everyone's going to love you. You don't really have to do much.
Yeah. I think this works a lot better. And I don't know if it's because it's compressed and everything is like you remember everything, so it's all connected together, or if it makes more sense because it's a lot more intentionally connected to solving overwhelm. But in either case, I feel like it feels stronger laid out like this. And if we can make each stepping stone a little bit more like sold on the idea that like the reason you're overwhelmed is because you're trying to create and do all this stuff in your business that you really don't need to do. The only thing you have to do is build community, and people will come to you. And actually, community building is a lot easier than you think. So it's like the only thing you need in your business is the community, and community is actually easier to create than most people will tell you. And if we've got the mastermind, which was a deep, intimate community. I've built, the Phil is a micro community. I've built teams that run without me. I've built support groups that continued on without me. Trying to think of any groups that I've built that are like really big. I mean, I think the Facebook posts where I've gotten hundreds of comments are a good example of that. I mean, it's not like a Facebook group, but I mean, I've got one post that I posted in a Facebook group that's like a year and a half later, I keep getting comments on that post, and I'm not there interacting at all. Like over 100 comments are like unique people that have commented on it.
I just realized the perfect example is how I created the mastermind. I was in the group. I'm like, hey, I'm going to do a 40-day challenge where I would hop on for like maybe 5 minutes and just provide value, which is the equivalent of 5 minutes per day, or just turn on the light for 40 days. And I got hundreds of like friend requests as a result, spoke to like 50 people. And of that, the mastermind was created. From that, the Soul family was born. From that, I met you and we became business best friends, and this business was created. All that came from flicking on the light 5 minutes per day for a little over a month.
Dude.
That is the power of community.
Boom.
And I think, I mean, I don't know if you have a better story, but it's like, if you want, I can share that story in the beginning.
I love it. I think we're there. I think I'm okay breaking here and kind of letting it settle, but like I think letting this simmer, but I feel like this is a little bit more on target. So cool. I gotta go. My ride is leaving, but I'm super glad we did this today, even though we weren't.
Yeah. Now I feel good.
It feels a lot better.
Yeah.
Cool. Bye-bye.
All right.